Welcome and happy Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us for another video podcast episode of Brown Girls Sound Off, where we center and amplify the voices of women of color. I'm Tony Woodland, and I am joined by these amazing boss ladies. Nafisa's in the house, and we've got Chantel, and last but not least, Miss Edwina. Hey, sis, hey.
Hello.
How y'all doing today?
Good.
I'm doing well.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, last week we got the month started with our series in honor of Children's Awareness Month, all about parenting. So this month we're talking about parenting, obviously from our perspectives. We started looking at ways that our identities have shaped the parenting decisions or choices that we've made and our styles, messages that we received around parenting. And so we shared a lot. So if you did not see last week's episode, I highly encourage you to take a look at it and let us know what you think. This week, we're going to dive deeper into something that Nafisa actually brought up last week. She started talking about communication. And, one of the questions we talked about was how do we feel like what's unique, right, about about us being parents as Black and brown women versus, like, let's say white parents, or not necessarily versus anyone, but what makes for a unique experience for us. But this week we're going to dive deeper into communication. And so when Nafisa spoke last week and she talked about growing up in a household where there was this thing like children should be like should speak when spoken to, or I heard it like seen and not heard. There were all these messages around children in the home, their roles in the home, their place, child's place, right? I heard a lot of that. And so I wanted to take some time to actually unpack that this week and take a look at the way that we communicate with our children. So the very first topic I want to talk about is talking at our children versus with our children. And so when do we feel that it's appropriate to do either one, and how do we negotiate or decide when to collaborate or when to dictate? So that's kind of where I want to start this conversation. Like, how do we know, all right, this is the time when I'm going to have to tell you, you have to do as I say, right? Versus here's the time where we're going to be in conversation. I want to hear your thoughts, your perspective, and let's negotiate and collaborate in that way. So I'd actually like to start off with Nafisa, since you kind of led into that segue last episode. So tell us, in terms of your parenting with your daughter, how is it that you determine when to do either of those?
I think it is when it's like me actually just dictating and I'm talking to her. I think it's when it's like a safety thing. So just like, when she's home by herself, don't you answer our door for nobody. I don't care who it is, not even for me and your father, things like that. So when there's no wiggling room for that. We can have a conversation and make sure you understand what I'm telling you to do, but it's not really any room for negotiation. So I think for me that when I'm really talking to her, telling her that she has to do something, and I don't really want to hear too much of what she has to say, unless it's just checking for understanding. It's when it is, a
unless you're a whole teacher, unless it is a
checking for understanding.
That right there.
I just always got that hat on. 18 years in, girl, 18 years in. But yeah, so it's when it's a safety thing for me. So otherwise, and I've grown to this, because like I said, I've always heard growing up, children are seen and not heard, and you had said something else, and I was like, yeah, that's another one I always heard, growing up. I can't recall what you said.
Speak when spoken to.
Speak when spoken to, yes. And it's just like, children need to have a voice too, and we need to teach them that it's important that people hear their voice. Because I feel like we're teaching our kids not to have boundaries, because it's like, okay, well, if something makes you feel uncomfortable, or just like, you won't finish everything on your plate, what if you just really don't like that? You don't like the peas, and maybe you don't like Brussels sprouts, and that doesn't work with your palate, and you just don't want to eat it, and you don't like it, and that's okay. But I remember that too. You won't finish your plate. You won't eat what's put in front of you too. finish it up and don't leave the table till you're done. You know, that was something when I was growing up as well that, you know, I did early on with my daughter, but then I started to, you know, think about it and different things that I learned from readings and just experiences. I was like, you know, if she doesn't like something, then I need to listen to her. We all have things that we like and we don't like, as far as food, as far as clothing, whatever. So I think it is really important that for me, I want to listen to her and make sure that she knows it's important for her to have a voice on what she likes and doesn't like. You know, she's maybe might not want to wear earrings, and that drives me crazy because I like earrings. But if that's not her, I have to let her be who she is and be an individual and, you know, find herself and know that it's okay to have those boundaries and to make sure that your voice is heard, of course, in a respectful manner, because I'm her mother. But, you know, I tell her, you know, she has a very assertive personality. I'm like, you know, she's the general, but I'm the president.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, and I got that from my dad. I can't even take full credit. You know, he has the best like little sayings and nuances and stuff. But yeah, so that's how I gauge it for me. So it's that safety thing when I'm talking to you, and it's all we're doing is checking to make sure you understand and we're on the same page. And then other than that, I really have grown to a point where I really want to have a conversation and listen to her and us, you know, talk through it and me like guiding her and just her making sure she understands her voice being heard is important, because we have to make sure we teach our kids to have boundaries.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know, last episode when you started to kind of lead into this discussion, I said I wanted to peel back some layers to understand, why the folks raising us even said those things. Now, obviously, I wasn't around when they were being raised, but just knowing a little bit about history, right? And knowing how to use my analytical skills, and even in talking with elders in the community. One thing I think that's being passed down. So you touched on a couple of things. So one thing, let's talk about like the whole food thing, because that was something that was huge in my household too, right? You finish, and I think that came from a scarcity mindset, right? It came from, we don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of food to waste. And so if it's on your plate, what we're not going to do is throw it in the trash. So what you're going to do is sit here and eat it, right? And so I think that it's important for us to understand the things that we grew up with and why our parents reared us the way that we did, so that we can do different and do differently intentionally. So I learned something a couple of years ago. I was taking some kids. I took kids on this Chesapeake Bay Foundation camping trip every year at a previous school. And CBF, as they're known, they have this thing where it's like, you only take what you're going to eat, and from there you eat what's on your plate, which feels very, very different. And so rather than perpetuating a scarcity mindset and perpetuating this power struggle over, I'm going to make you eat your food, it is, let me teach you how to take what you need. Let me teach you how to be part of a community, right? Such that you take what you feel you need for your body, and you'd be better off taking a little bit at a time, because after that, what we're not going to do then is throw food away, right? So that feels different than, having parents just kind of sopping up a bunch of food, jamming it on your plate, and knowing that your stomach is the size of your itty bitty fist, and then you can't eat it all or you don't like it. And so I just wanted to share that, because as we're talking about communication, we have to think about what it is that we're communicating to our kids when we say things to them. Even when it's that, do what you're told thing, we've got to start to realize, especially, and I can't speak for everyone else, but, we don't have a shortage of food in my household. So I don't need to perpetuate a scarcity mindset. And even if we did, that's not something I want them to grow up with. But I do want my kids to know that in this house, this is a community in this home. So yeah, don't just pile up your plate and then you decide, oh, I'm done. No, that's because then I'm not going to force you to sit there until you eat it, but you're going to wrap it up and you're going to warm that. That's your lunch for tomorrow. That part, right? Oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? So like that when you said that, I wanted to unpack that a little bit, because I think that I'm sure that it used to be about more than power and control, and more about what resources are actually available. But Edwina, so share with us, your thoughts around this conversation about communication.
Absolutely. And I will have to agree with Nafisa. I think because I was reflecting on like when is it when I feel like I'm talking to, I mean at. And it is like a safety thing. You know, if I feel like you're putting yourself in danger, us in danger, to protect you from, you know, something, or I'm thinking about an incident that happened today with my son playing football outside. The football hits somebody's car. And I was like, okay, well, that's the end of that game because what we're not going to do is be hitting people's cars out here. But then I decided to negotiate the situation. I was like, well, I realized that what he was playing with was not his football, it was somebody else, some older boy. So the football is like twice the size. Had he been playing with the football, you know, his age appropriate and it's a little softer. I was like, well, come get your own football and then you know, and he wanted to go into explaining to me why that football was better because, but okay, well, listen. See, and this is when the conversation, and you know, here we are, we're, you know, negotiating, like, if you want to continue to play, choose this option that would be a better, you know, a better choice because it's preventing you from hitting other people's car. Because if someone's car is to get hit and a dent happens, then it becomes a problem for me. And so I started doing that a lot with my son. And I realized my girls they don't really, they're like easy breezy girls. It's not a lot of things that I have to really like talk with them when it comes to talking. What is it at them? I don't do a lot of talking at my girls. Like we can talk, you know, we can communicate. But with that little boy, I don't know if it's his generation alpha or whatsoever. Everything has to be like, it's almost like you can't talk at them. You really do have to find a way to talk to them and negotiate it where they understand the reason behind what I am saying. So everything has to be relevant. Everything has to be real life connections with them. So that's how I started. I started changing the way in which I communicated with him so he can see for himself why what I'm saying is significant and why he should, you know, like find the value in what I'm saying and how it can be effective for him. And so that has been like the difference in communication as far as talking to or at.
Mm-hmm. And you know, as you were sharing, I was also, you know, I'm always thinking about you know, it's the educator in us, right? About like how these skills then transfer over into other real life situations. And so kind of going off of what you shared, Edwina, and Nafisa have shared so far, when we're in negotiation with our children and we're collaborating with our children, we're also fostering critical thinking skills, right? So we're also teaching them, you know, how to listen and examine a different perspective, right? Because they might not have thought about things from our perspectives and vice versa. They're watching us actually challenge what we already thought. And Wayne at first was like, I'm not gonna have an insurance company call my insurance company about paying for this dent or broken window. But then you thought, well, but there's a different way. We use this softer ball, right? And so he actually, in that case, your son actually got to watch you presenting different options, right? Here's a problem, presenting different options. All right, I think this one is the better solution that would mitigate this issue. Everybody's happy, type of thing. And so it's actually showing them a lot of lifelong worthwhile lessons. Chantal, what about you? How do you decide when to collaborate, when to dictate?
You know, as a mom raising three boys, I often feel outnumbered sometimes. So I'm gonna be honest, sometimes I have to decipher between the two just to kind of maintain control of the house and keep the house in order. You gotta kind of dictate certain things, like, you know, but one of the things I do appreciate, I'm sorry, about the relationship with my boys is the fact that we all can be so open because I'm teaching them that you do have a voice, your thoughts and your feelings matter. And so if someone on the outside were looking in and they would hear some of the things my boy would say, they might say, oh, that might be a little borderline disrespectful. And I say, no, it's not disrespectful. They have a voice, they have thoughts, and they are allowed to communicate them. Now, if they go overboard where it borders the line of disrespect or something like that, then I have to correct them and say, bring it back. but I do want them to be fully aware of owning their voice and being able to ask questions. Well, mom, why do I have to clean the room every day? Okay, well, let me explain that to you. Because it's appropriate to keep your room clean. Cleanliness is appropriate, things like that. So instead of us talking at our kids, it's good for us to have conversation. And like you said, make it relative and explain things to them so that they can make their own, assessments and judgments from there, right? And make it personal to them. So I do sometimes refer back to what Nafisa was talking about when it comes to that safety part. And then there's certain things that's just not up for negotiation because you're not old enough to fully understand why I'm giving you this directive. I just need you to trust my judgment and do what I'm asking you to do.
Thank you for sharing that. Trust is at the core of communication, right? And that's with any relationships, but especially with our kids. We, from the moment we start taking care of them, we are doing things that build up that trust. And obviously sometimes they may test it or doubt it at times when they think their friends know more than we do, or that TikTok knows more than, we do. But it comes back to that trust. And ultimately, our kids, they know what's at their core. I want to actually just kind of, we don't need to go too deep into this, but I definitely want to point out the fact that there has been a theme in what you all have shared around giving your kids or making space for your kids to use their voice, right? Because we don't give anyone a voice, they already have it, but creating the space for our children to use their voices. And I want to also just add on to that, something that actually hasn't quite come up in this conversation yet is it's so important for us to do that, because as has been shared on previous episodes, we don't want to perpetuate this idea that there are certain things that are off limits that we can talk about, right? And keep these family secrets and things that are happening around us, under the rug. And when we constantly silence our children, that's what we teach them, that there are some things you keep inside, there's some things you don't. Where in fact, it should be, there are some people you can share certain things with. Find your safe adult, find your confidant. We should be teaching them that part, right? Like, who can you trust to tell this thing to? But not that there are some things you talk about, there are some things you don't, because I can't think of anything that should be off the table in terms of talking about. Like, literally, can y'all challenge me in this moment? Because I literally can't think of not one thing that is like, no, you cannot talk about. I can't think of one thing. I can think about things that you might not want to share that with everybody or, whatever. But I'm just thinking that's a contrast from the way that I grew up. When I was growing up, there were things that you did not talk about. And now as a mom, I actually can't think of anything that's on that list of things that you should not talk about. And so I just want to make sure that we're constantly creating spaces for our kids to share from their experience, share from their perspective, so that, God forbid, something comes up, that we've already normalized sharing, we've normalized expressing yourself, and we've normalized the fact that everything's on the table, especially when it comes to mommy. Everything's on this table, right? And you can talk to me about any and everything. So thank you for sharing that. And if you're watching us, we love to hear your thoughts in terms of how do you know when to dictate? How do you know when to collaborate? And what does that look like? But I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that comes up a whole lot, especially within, the past year or two. And, our children are digital natives in ways that we will never understand. There is technology for babies in the womb. Okay, that part, right? There are machines, there's technology you can put up to your belly that, whether it's playing music or whatever the case may be. Our kids are truly digital natives. And I'm not, suggesting that there's anything wrong with that. But the fact is that they have more access to information, right, at earlier ages. So that is that part that comes with that. And so since we're speaking from our perspectives as women of color, as for Black women raising Black children, I know something that's on my mind is that my kids have more access to the news and current events. And I do think that's a beautiful thing. But there's a double-edged sword that comes with that, because they're more aware of injustices against people that look like them. They're more aware about, how the world sees them at early ages. And so what I want to know, and I'm sure there are some parents who are wondering the same thing, is how is it that you prepare your children to deal with or process what it is they see or hear, and how, like, what is it that you communicate to them to help them deal with or process what it is that they see or hear? I didn't talk in my household about like racism or any of that. That was, first of all, that was something that happened back in the day during the civil rights era, right? The lies we've been told. But anyway, I'm just saying that was something that it just didn't come up. But how do you all talk with your kids about it? Chantel, has that come up with your kids?
Oh, absolutely, especially with my oldest. When the whole George Floyd situation took place and he really got to see firsthand the level of racism in his face, it was very eye-opening. It was very hard for him to see and absorb. And we had to have a lot of conversations around racism and injustice. And, I really challenged him to think about ways he could express himself. And he is a drummer and he did that through music. And it was really sad that we had to have the conversation, but it was very much so necessary. And I think what came out of it was I challenged him to express himself and his feelings and his emotions, and how did he connect to watching these injustices take place. And he did that through music. So we had a lot of conversations about his anger, his frustration, him being a young African American boy and being scared that, Mom, why do I have to worry about my life being at risk? I'm just a young boy, and as a mom, it breaks your heart, but we have to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, I would love to know, like, what do you say to him when he asks you that? You know what I mean?
It's been an ongoing conversation. I tell him that these are injustices we've been fighting for a very long time,
Mhm.
and that we will continue to fight them. And I allow him to express how he feels about it. And then I also challenge him and I say, well, how do you think you can play a part in uplifting, your community, or challenging your friends to get more involved around social justice issues? And
Mm.
so that is definitely something that he has been much more aware of, and he's been more vocal in speaking out about it, and his expression is through music,
Mm.
which I think is really fantastic because that's how young people connect. And so I'm proud of him for taking that challenge on and
Mm.
really wanting to learn more and utilizing his voice.
You know, First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that this is a topic that, many parents grapple with, and it brings about a lot of anxiety and stress and even relive trauma for those of us who have had experiences around these things. And so when we're thinking about what to communicate or how to communicate with our kids, sometimes we're thinking about our own experiences as well. But one thing that you shared, Chantal, that I think was key was this idea around kind of turning it back to your son, and like, how can you uplift your community? And I think what you're communicating to him in that moment is that there is hope. You have power, right? There's something you can do. But the other thing that's so powerful that I do with my teenage son as well is it also helps to chunk information for them, right? That's a whole comprehensive strategy, but it also helps to chunk information for them, because you got to realize when they're watching the news and they see like all these images and hear all this stuff, it can make it seem like injustice in the world is insurmountable. There's this big old thing out there that can impact me, and that does impact me in ways that I don't even know yet. I know that it does, but I don't know how. And that can just seem so overwhelming. And so what I love that you do with your son is you're bringing it back to the local and immediate. So how is it that you can start to recognize injustice within your own circle? Like, if you need to call out a friend, or if you need to raise your hand, especially for our older kids. For my child, I'm telling him, you know, if something is said or done, even if it's a teacher, you know, from a then what I need you to do is I need you feel comfortable writing that email and or know when to bring me in. But I want you to start using your voice, and you don't have to try to fight for the world, but what you can fight it for is your world. So what, you know, you can fight for your community and the environments that you're in. So thank you so much for sharing that. Nafisa, what about you? You know, how do you, has this come up with Zuri, and how is it that you handle that?
It definitely has. I mean, I know even for me, I try not to even watch the news that much because it's just depressing. So, I mean, it really is. Like you said, it's like trying to like navigate through that and like chunking things, everything that they're seeing and taking in, whether it be from in passing the news that's on, or they see on TikTok, or you know, they, like you said, they have more access to things with the technology, and chunking it in a way that they understand it, and that's like age appropriate. So I know I can think of one particular instance when Zuri had she had made like a poster thing in art class, and it was like Black Lives Matter. And I was like, oh, I like that. And I said, well, do you understand what that means? Do you know what that means? And she said, it means that Black people are important. I said, yeah, that's true. But I said, do you know why, you know, why everyone's saying like Black Lives Matter? And, you know, trying to unpack it for her. She was like, well, I know like the police were killing some people. So she was kind of understood, but not really understood it. And I think she felt like she was seeing different things that were sad that she would show me on TikTok. And I think she wanted to just do something. So in her 10-year-old mind, that was her poster she created in art class. That was her way to express kind of what she was feeling. And I kind of struggled with, I remember the moment, like, okay, well, what is like age appropriate? Like, you know, for me to have this discussion with her. And I just kind of told her that, you know, unfortunately, you know, there are people who are in positions of power, like police, particularly white people, and they don't see Black people's lives as important as their, you know, as white people and people who aren't people of color. And you know, they hurt them, they don't give them a chance, you know, for the smallest thing, they're ready to pull out the gun and shoot rather than have a conversation and talk through things where that excessive force isn't necessary. But they don't think that when it comes to us. It's just automatically, I see you as a threat and to shoot and kill, unfortunately. And you know, she listened, and we had a conversation, and it was sad that I think I mentioned this on another episode, I don't know which series, but like I had a conversation with her that she has to be aware of that too. Like, you have to be aware that some people are going to see you as a threat and not as a little girl who's still just you know, trying to navigate through the world, and definitely is obviously not a threat, but some people will see you that way. So you have to be mindful of that too. When like you're outside with your friends, like don't be around like trouble, because you could be associated with that and be the wrong place, the wrong time, God forbid. You know, people will call the police on some little kids too, or do something simple. So I had to have that conversation with her too, to kind of be mindful of that and the company you're keeping, because you never know what, you know, a police officer may do or see you as a threat, or a neighbor. So I had to have that conversation with her. So yeah, that's kind of what it made me think of. And it made me really sad to have that conversation with her, because she was like, well, what do you mean? Like, we're all the same, you know, we're all human. And I said, yeah, we are all human. But unfortunately, you know, in America, there's so many people that look and see our color of our skin first and don't like us because of that. And they don't see us as being a human race, and, you know, all being the same. We all believe the same. Mm-hmm. So that was a sad moment for me, that I kind of felt like I was taking a little bit of her innocence away, but I knew that it was necessary to have that conversation with her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what you're doing is so powerful, Nafisa, because it's giving her, first of all, it's affirming for her, because our kids are seeing these things, right? They're not only saying these, they're having these conversations because their friends are also saying it. And so what is challenging, you know, for me about being a parent of Black children is obviously we can't filter out the noise. We can't determine what messages they receive, you know, from elsewhere, you know, beyond us. And so all that we can do is make sure that those lines of communication are open. And Nafisa, you brought up something I really want to touch on really quickly before Edwina chimes in. I know a lot of parents, especially when I think back to when I was a classroom teacher, a lot of parents will want to know, like, how do I know what's age appropriate? Da, 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 da. And listen, with these kids having the access that they do, even with trackers, blockers, it does not matter. Stuff, trust me, I know I worked in schools with firewalls up the yin yang and porn popped up. Okay. So I'm saying that to say we cannot shield our kids from the things that they see. Right. So let's just put that out there. So I have two questions that I want to just share with everyone who's watching. And this is whether you're watching and you are a white educator, because I get a lot of questions from white educators who are often, nervous about how to have these conversations about kids in their care or even their own children. And so two questions that I would do or that I would say, first question is, what do you know? So start by asking the kids what they already know, right? Because there you can catch a lot of misconceptions. They'll tell you, well, yeah, everybody's trying to kill me. And you can say, no, baby, it's not, you can dispel that, no, this isn't everyone, everyone's not against you. I'm going to do my best to keep you safe. You can try to tease out what's just kind of a lot of fear, and stuff like that arises. But the other question I would ask is, what do you want to know? Or what do you wonder? So that way you can you'll know what they're ready for instead of, baby, let's sit down and have a conversation. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just giving tips. I'm just giving suggestions because people ask. So what do you know and what do you want to know? Because if we don't ask our kids what they want to know, then all that wondering is going to sit up there, and trust me, they're going to go to school and ask their friends. They're going to start Googling and TikToking and YouTubing and all kinds of stuff. So we have to ask our kids what it is they want to know. And we've got to be prepared for what it is they're going to share with us, because they're more curious than we even can imagine. Because trust me, they're going to be some of the things that the kids aren't even going to share with us if they're really wondering, because in their minds, they're like, all right, I don't want to ask this question, but let's put that out on the table. What do you know? What do you want to know? So Edwina, can you chime into this conversation as we start to wrap up? Has this come up in your household with your oldest, your middle, your youngest, and how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. And you actually segue right in with the questions. That's funny. We actually use that question we use those all the time. This is something that they have seen a strategy in school that noticed that wonder. And so I brought that home with me at my table. One of the places we have conversations at the dinner table. I'm like old school when it comes to dinner. We eat dinner together as a family. And this is a place where I really get to know like what's going on. How was your day? And like, deep dig in with like, if a situation popped up. So I remember the Capitol riot, we were all actually home when that happened. And, it was at the middle of the day. And it just like, everybody was like, turn on the TV, turn on the TV. And I turned the TV on and seeing people scaling walls and acting a fool and so I was shocked, I was shocked by it as an adult, but then having my children actually experience that moment with me. And so that really opened up a space for us to have the conversation. First thing, like I was just listening to how they were reacting to what they were seeing. So that's the first thing that I would like to hear from the children, like, how are you, like, what do you think about like what's going on? And so just having them process their thoughts at that moment, that real time moment was something that I try to do. Like, first I want to hear, like, what are your thoughts? What do you think about this? And then going and it's like, what would you do differently is another thing that I like to add in as well. Like if you were in this situation, like how would you have carried it? What would you have done differently? So to kind of bring in that, local individual piece, like how you can do something different, how you can start the action part of this movement that clearly is happening, that is going to continue, and you are going to eventually play a part within your community. So as children now, it's like, the thoughts that you all are having, what are the actions you want to start taking right now? And so that's pretty much how our conversations go, whether it's, from that Capitol moment, or if it's a conversation at the table, something happened at school, what happened? What you think about that? Like, what are your reactions? How are you feeling about that situation? And what would you do differently with something that I like to hear from them?
Mm, I love that. What would you do differently? What I love about that, Edwina, thank you for sharing as well, is it reminds me of what Chantel was sharing earlier about what, she asked her son, what are some ways that you can uplift the community? It actually shines the light on the power that our kids have. Too often, our children, too often, Black and brown children, get messages and narratives around like helplessness and hopelessness. And then they develop like senses of learned helplessness and learned hopelessness. And it becomes this cycle. So if they think that the situation is hopeless, there's nothing that they can do, that you have to be in position to do a certain thing, then they actually, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so what I love is that we are speaking life into our children. We're telling them, I know that you see this, right? I know you see this. I know you're thinking about it. I know you're processing it. So tell me, oh mighty, powerful child of mine, what's something you can do? And inside that inner superheroes, right? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like you can just feel it, feel the energy shift, right? And so what that does, I found, is also help calm, their fears, because yeah, it does raise a lot of anxiety. And that is very natural. And so we don't want to push that out. We want to let that in. But by just breathing life and hope into them, it helps to calm their fears, just from my experience. So thank you so much for sharing. I want to end with a really, really quick whip around share. And so the final thoughts, I want to know, what do you love about being a parent? So just each give us just one thing you love. I mean, absolutely love about being a parent. And Wayne, I'm going to start with you. What's one thing you love about being a parent?
I think I'm enjoying the process of seeing my children come into their own. It's like their own individual blossoming is happening, is what I love about it. I don't know what part I played in it. I don't take credit for all of it, but I love to see the blooming process of the children.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How about you, Nafisa? What do you love about being a parent?
I'm gonna pretty much say I'm almost identically to what Edwina said, but I just love just seeing just like the process and just the different stages and just seeing her grow. And like she said, just coming into her own as a young lady. So I just have enjoyed just every little stage. And now I'm just trying to like just bottle it all up, because it just seems like it's getting so close to where she's gonna really be on her own, with her starting middle school. So I just love just seeing her grow and just going through the different stages. I really enjoy that.
Thank you. Chantal, what do you love about being a mama?
I honestly love hanging out with my kids. They my road dog. We rock and we roll. And I think I really, really enjoying being a part of their world, right? Like sometimes we as parents think that they're a part of our world, but no, we are a part of their world. And they are legit funny and will call me out on my stuff. And I'd be like, oh, they really watching for real. And so it is the joy of my life, just really being a part of their world.
Mm, that brings a smile to my face. One thing that I love about being a mom is, it reminds me of, I feel like I'm planting a beautiful tree. And, I'm like planting roots in the ground. So I love, it's sort of like what you all have said, but really specifically, I feel like I'm adding light to the world through these like little humans that I raise. And I know that, then their trees will continue to grow, and then, they will bear fruit, and, in many ways. And I mean that, very openly, in terms of the things that I know they will contribute to this world, that I have no doubt my children will contribute and already are contributing to this world. So that's what I love about being a parent. If you are watching this, as you can see, the mood has shifted, and we all love talking about our babies now. So please type in the comments. We would love to know, what do you love about being a parent or caregiver? What do you love about having a hand in raising children or young people, supporting young people. Whether, again, you have children of your own, whether you're helping to raise other children, whether you've given birth to, for the children in your life, the young people in your life, what do you love about having them in your life? Please tell us. And please let us know, again, what has resonated with you. Do you see any mirrors in anything that we've shared? Is there any way that you've seen your own experiences reflected back at you through our stories that we have shared with you all and the rest of the world tonight? We'd love to know that as well. Please tune in. First of all, thank you, ladies, for joining me in this conversation as always. I love seeing your beautiful faces. Please tune in with us to Brown Girls Sound Off, where we center and amplify the voices of women of color next week. You don't want to miss this. And we got something really good coming up for y'all. Not going to tell you yet. But again, please join us next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But for now, we are signing off. Bye, everyone.